Good afternoon, folks, and we are here today. We are going to start with a little tutorial on enumerators, and then we shall move on to the crafting list, which we started last night. So, without further ado, let's begin this. I have created another folder in our little tutorial project called Enumerators. So we're going to open that up and we are going to create an actor. Okay, and we'll call it BP test. Okay, so what is an enumerator? Well, an enumerator is basically a static list. And normally it's a static list of related strings. Okay? Now that could be a list of days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, etc. Or could be months of the year, January, February, March, April, May. Or for a game, it could be the class of a character in an RPG. So it could be like wizard, fighter, cleric, rogue, whatever. And we can use it with a special thing called switch. Now, let's have a look at one and create one. So right click and under blueprints, enumeration. We'll call it E char class. Okay, for character class. We double click it and it's empty at this point, and what we can do is click on a new, then we can put in fighter, return that. We shall add another 3. We shall have wizard, we shall have cleric, and we shall have rogue. Okay, so we save that and we can minimize it down. Now what we can do with our BP test is we can create a variable. We can call it class. Then we can go to the variable type and type E and select our E char class. And now when we compile, you will see that this is our list of fighter, wizard, cleric, rogue. So, what can we do with that? Well, what we can do is, if we go into the event graph and we want to know, or let's say, for example, you wanted to do different things depending on which class it was. So if it's a fighter, do one thing, wizard do another, cleric do another, and rogue do something else. Well, in normal circumstances, if this was just a value, like 0, 1, 2, and 3, then you'd have to say if x equals 1, do that. If it's false, check. If it equals 2, branch on that and say true or false, and basically go down the list, branching as you go. So, with the class, what we can do is something called switch. And that gives us an execution pin for each of the different values in the enumerator. Okay? So now we have a pin that will come off for fighter, wizard, cleric, or rogue. We don't need to check branches if something equals 1 or if it equals 2 or 3 or 4. By creating the enumerator, we get the pins from a switch class. Okay, and what we can do from there is say print string. We shall leave it up for, let's say, 20 seconds. Put that to 20. And one of the ways we could do this is to plug these all in here. We'll do something slightly different in a minute, right? But just to give you an idea. Now, the other thing about the class or the enumerator is if we get it, we get a friendly version if we actually convert it to string. You'll notice enum to string returns user-friendly name. Okay? So basically it's going to return fighter, wizard, cleric, rogue. These would actually be, because this is a static array, this would be actually the value 0, 1, 2, and 3. Right? But it's given us a far friendlier way of interacting with our enumerator. Okay? So if we save that and we drag our test object in, okay? Now the other thing we'll do here is, just so we know what it's set to, we'll set it here, and if we go to details, you can see that it's fighter, and we can set it easily in the default class if we've got it seen in the editor. And you'll notice here that if we press play, we get fighter up here. Now we can click on this and we can change it obviously to cleric, and now we get cleric. So the enumerator can't be changed at runtime. Okay, so it's a static array of strings. It can be included in structures, which we will do a little introduction to in the future. You can have more than one enumerator. There's no reason why you can't have multiple enumerators in your blueprint and everywhere in the game. So that is a little introduction to enumerators. Let's have a look at it again. We've created it, we've put in fighter, wizard, cleric, rogue. Now, if you ever wanted to, say you were making your game and you thought, oh, we've only got 4 character classes, we can always add a new one. And let's say it was a paladin. Okay, so if we save that and we have a look at our test, you'll notice now our paladin is included in the switch. Okay, I'll just have to stop this a second. Okay, we'll just move that up. And then we just need to deal with our new enumerator, okay? And what we can do now is you'll notice in the editor, in the drop down, we now have our paladin, so we can select paladin if we want, press play, paladin. Okay, so once you get into more complex projects, the enumerator becomes indispensable. Okay, you can use it for weapons, like if it's a handheld weapon, if it's a projectile weapon, a throwing weapon, a melee weapon, that can be an enumerator. Just your imagination and how you're going to design your game, how you're going to use the enumerators, okay? And as we move on to my actual project and get on the crafting list, you will see that I use numerous enumerators within my blueprints, okay? So hopefully you've learned something from that, and now we shall move on to the crafting list. I'll just save all this. Okay. And we shall close down our tutorial. Now, from last night, we can take a look at this, and this will take a moment to open up for the first time. Shouldn't be too long. And we can basically check out what we've got so far. Okay, anytime you like Unreal Engine, it is fine by me. Okay, so here we go. We have our inventory and our crafting, and when we click one of these boxes, it adds one to the crafting list. Okay? Now we are going to have to make this whole thing smaller, but we'll work on it while it's quite big and we've got good visibility. So what I actually want to do is, while we're working on this, I actually want to have a look at this and see why it is not adding to the crafting list. We certainly haven't done all of the logic here, because the logic in this is going to get a bit intense. But fundamentally, we should be looking at the crafting item, which is opening up now, and in the graph, when we click on this, we should be looking at this. So what we'll do is we shall click on this. It takes us to here. We shall step into this. So we shall step over this. Step over this. Right? And it's at index 0. And it shouldn't be -1. So basically we're not doing anything here. Okay, so the point here is we need to stop this here. I'm going to change the size of that. Okay. So basically, if it's false, we need to check the length of our item list. So what I'm going to do, actually what I'm going to do first of all is give ourselves some space, right? Because there's certainly going to be more complicated things going on here. So we basically have to get the length of this array. So we get the length, and we basically say -1. Minus, please. We say -1, and that's basically the last position. Okay? So we're getting the last position, and if this index is not equal to this thing here, then we basically do this again. So we can branch from here. Okay, so false is going to go in here. I'm probably going to break these down into functions because this is going to get a bit spaghetti if we don't. Now, if this is true, we do something else. So if this is false, we add a new item to the array. So it could be copper wire, then widgets, then a new thing, and then copper wire again. Okay? Now, we shall take care of this first. So, when we come in here, it's going to do copper wire. If we come in here, we can resume that. It's going to do widget. And then if we click copper wire again, it should have added our new value, which it didn't. Right, which is a bit of a bummer, but so what we want to do is go back to our crafting list and find out why it didn't do it. Okay? So we can click, we have our copper wire, we have our widget, we click on copper wire again. Okay? We don't need that anymore. We can resume that. Now, this should say 0. Which it does. Okay, so it's not equal to -1. So we step over this, and that's 0, and the length, the last position is 1. So if this is true or false, it should add. So if we step over that, what happened? Okay, we'll try that again. So the exact same, that should be 0, because our copper wire is at position 0 in the array. Okay, the length is 1, or sorry, the length of it is 2, right? We have copper wire, we have widgets. So we take 1 off to get the highest position, which is 1. And if this is not, if the position of this is not equal to the last position in the grid, then we basically add another item to the list. Okay? And as you can see, we have the branch and we've goofed, because this should actually say true. So if this is not equal to this, then we add. Duh. Right, okay, so let's run that again, try that again. Right, we're going to add copper wire, resume, we get our copper wire, add a widget, resume, we get our widget. Now we get the copper wire again, step over, and we add. And we can resume, and now that is correct. Okay? We can now add our widget, and we can resume, and we get our widget. So that works absolutely fine. We can actually, this isn't going to be too bad as far as this goes. We'll move this over there a bit. And now what we can do is basically the last part of this is if this is false, so if it is the last item, okay, basically what we do is we duplicate that, right? We get the item quantity, and we basically add a 1 to that. Okay, then our item can come off there, and then we set array element. Okay, so the false goes in here. We've got item, we're making the struct, the item goes in here, and the final thing here is we get the index. Okay, and then we rebuild our grid. And if I've done that all properly, then we should have kind of a working grid. Right, we shall take this breakpoint off. So there we go, breakpoint is off. We can resume that. We've got our copper. If we click copper again, it did add 1. Yeah, I think this is because we're basically passing back 1 all the time. So it is actually working. So we can add, it's only ever going to go up to 2 because we need to actually get the value properly. But you can see there, at the moment, that is working. And in actual fact, we should be grabbing the item list let's have a think about this. We're getting the index. Right, so what we can actually do to fix this, let's fix it for now, is we can duplicate this. We can get a copy. Okay. And our copy comes from the index. As I said, we can tidy this up later. Okay. We can break this. We're getting our copy. And then what we can do is we can break that struct. We can add that. And basically we can do that as well. And then the oops, we shall undo that. That's given us the item from there, so yeah, that can basically what we could do is delete that and plug that in there. Okay, so let's test that. I think that's pretty close to where the logic needs to be. So there we go. Now this should be enclosed inside here, inside that widget. So, but there you see that we actually have our crafting list is looking pretty good at the moment, I'd say. Go into here again. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that. And we're going to wrap this with a vertical box. And the vertical box is going to be that size. So we shall save that and we'll see if that actually sorts out our issue. and it does not. Interesting problem. Ah, hang on a second. No, that's that image there, that's fine. So the problem here is that for some reason it's basically been allowed so we shall look for it's the crafting item, isn't it? What we'll do is we'll put these in manually, right? So that's the wrong thing. So it's not the crafting item. It's a list item. Okay. So if we go back to here, and we can basically delete that, and this one is the list item. Okay, and what we can do is we can play about with this till it basically locks it to this horizontal box. So let's change the item to the copper wire one. Yeah, that's not going to do it. We have to actually change it in the list item itself. Right, so what we'll do is, this is the image, so we shall change this to copper wire. Save that. Then if we go back to our crafting list, oh, okay, so that's kind of weird. Right, we'll delete that, right? And we'll drop this back in. And that's kind of weird. So the image is humongous. Right, is there a way to refresh this? Or does it just basically do what it likes? Right, there we go. Okay, so what we want to do is duplicate it, copy, paste, then paste again, and then we basically go up and we say column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, and column 5. So we can see here that nothing there is basically changing our it's not changing anything. Like, as I said, this should not show. It shouldn't place these in here if now, am I missing some setting here where we can lock this inside? I mean, we could be clever about this. And only show like 5. Right? And then we could like center it. Nah, I don't think centering it's a good idea. Right, I'll tell you what we'll do, right? Rather than have to investigate this on while we do this on the stream, what I'm going to do is a little bit of cleverness that will hopefully make sense to you guys. Right, so it's actually in our crafting item. So in our rebuild the grid, we set the column count, and what we basically say is if, well, we get call count, right? And basically if call count is, we do is greater than, sorry, we'll say is less than 5, then we'll do this. So we can branch that. Now it's still going to store it's going to still build our arrays of the items that we want to build, but when it comes to actually build the widget, it's only going to build it 5 long. Okay? So we're just going to say it's less than 5. So the minute it hits 5, it's basically going to, it's basically not going to draw anymore. Okay? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it stops drawing them. It is still adding them to the array, but it's just not going to draw them. Okay? So there we have our little crafting grid, and we can move on from there now and actually do the crafting. Okay, so I think we require a bit of tidying up of the code here. It's in the crafting list, I believe. Yeah, we need to tidy up this mess a bit. So let's start doing that. Let's see if we can get it kind of tidy but not do any functions or anything that's going to tidy it up a bit more. If it comes to it, we'll do it, but I'm trying to do it without that at this point. Got a lot of stuff coming out of here. We can probably get this to here. And there. We can probably straighten that to there. We can tidy this up a bit, like that. We can drag this down a bit here. We can probably tidy that up there by doing that. Let's see if we can tidy it further. We can we can certainly do that. Then we can move this down a bit and then straighten this to there. Okay, and then if we bring this down a bit, and then we could actually move that up there. Then we can move this. And that. And we can plug that in there. Yeah, that's beginning to look not too bad. What do you think, guys? We're looking like we're not too bad as far as tidiness goes and spaghetti goes. I'd say that's fairly acceptable. It's certainly not the worst I've done. Not the best I've done, but it's not the worst. What we'll do is we'll do a further little that. That's good, we like that. Okay. But the main thing is here that our crafting list is fully functional. Let's see it again. We can add copper wire. If we add one, it adds one, it adds one, it adds one. If we add something else, we can add one, add one. If we cannot add another, we can add. Then we can add a new thing, and then back to your copper wire, new thing. Now, it's, as I said, it's still adding those things, right? It's still adding to the array. So once we start processing them and these start disappearing, okay, then basically it will in fact, they will appear onto the left of the crafting list. Or sorry, the right. The right. Otherwise known as the other left. Right, so now the question is, how do we process the crafting? Well, actually, there's two things to consider here. What we need to do is, let me just demonstrate this once again. Sorry about that. And that's not what we want. This is what we want. Right. We need to make sure that we have what is required to make copper wire. Right? So in that case, it would be copper sheet. Okay? So we need to check the values to make sure you can make that many. Okay? And then as they add to the different values, we need to check each time they add that they still have enough. Okay? So let's do that very thing. So when they click on a crafting item, okay, when they click on this item, we are going to have to check Hey Kofi, what does POYY mean? I don't know what that means, mate. Right, so what we're going to have to do is we are basically going to have to check the item. So what we're going to say is we're going to drag this item in, get item, right? And then it's going to be data table time again. I'm beginning to think that in the crafting item and in the list item, what we should maybe do is just grab when they click it or when it's created, then we set up the structure as well as the item so that we're getting it every time, right? So I'll tell you what, let's do that, right? Let's do that. I think that sounds like a reasonable thing. We have our item, we're already getting the data table, right? We're getting our inputs. This was from last night, checking again. But what we actually do want to do is we want to get the struct of the product that we're actually getting here, right? Now, if I remember rightly, this isn't going to work. I think what we have to do is do a remove. No, it's not a remove, it's a replace. Replace. Right, so we just basically replace from that to that, and then we basically plug that in there. Okay, so we're going to do that, we're going to do that, then we're going to move that to there, and then we're going to move this up to here, and that keeps it nice and tidy. And we're going to have struct item, and it's going to be, oh, welcome back Kofi as well, by the way, welcome back. It's nice to see names that I'm beginning to recognize and see them now and again in the different streams. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this to struct product. Okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to set it here, and that's going to go into there. Okay? And now we have everything that we need when we actually come in here, right? So when we come in here, we can actually check. So basically what I can do here is pull this in, get it, and then break it. Okay? Now, here is a little tip for any beginners if you're using structs. Now, as you've seen, you can break it, okay? And the other way you can do it is just basically to split this pin. Okay, now you'll notice this gives you the exact same as here, right? Now, the difference is here that if we wanted to set something, right? So let's drag that in, and this is our image button, right? This is a bad example. Say we wanted to set the product name, right? And we wanted to set text, right? Set text. Text. Set text. Okay. Now, this is the difference. With doing the break, you can actually, if I was to use this and then use the product name, that's fine. But this stays at this size with all the pins available. If I use this with the break, I can do that. I can click on it and hide unconnected pins. Okay? So you will see that we don't have this big list of variables that we're not using. Okay? Whereas if you break it, then you can hide all the pins that you're not using. Okay? So that's the two ways you can get to your variables in a struct or a structure. Okay? So we shall delete that for now, and we shall pull this back in. Now we are probably going to do a function here, because what we want to do is we want to check these inputs to find out what they are. Okay? We want to find out what these are and if we have enough of those things to satisfy a click. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to write a function. Hey Steve GT, nice to meet you, mate. Apollon as well. How are you doing today? So we're going to can craft. So we're going to write a function called can craft. Okay? And what we shall do is we shall do one input and we shall need an output. Okay? And we shall call the output is viable. That's going to be a bool. And our input is going to be, you're looking for a horror game idea. I think if you're thinking of a horror game idea, I think the best way to do it is to think of a place to have it. And then try to come up with somewhere that it hasn't been done before, which is going to be very, very difficult. You could think of like hospital, well that's probably been done. Mansion, obviously that's been done. Just think of different places, somewhere that, I mean it doesn't need to be a specific locale or a building. You know, you could set it in a town. Okay, but, well, what you need to do then is make the town kind of different. So it's a kind of unique idea. So this is going to be our struct. Okay. And that's going to be, we don't need that. Right, because we've got it here, so sod that. It'd have been a nice way to do it, but sod it. Right. I'm probably going to need a couple of local variables or something here. And we can delete that event dispatcher because we're not really using it. Right, so we bring in a struct. Stimulate down arrow keybind. Right, I'm sorry Steve GT, right, because number one, I haven't worked on Unity for years. Number two, I haven't got a mobile phone. And number three, I'm not sure of how keybinds work in Unity. Right, for example, if you were to try and do this in Unreal Engine, right, all you would do was you'd go into your project settings, right, and if you would go to input, and you would just basically do an action mapping, right, and then you'd set a button to it. So these basically have all the, if it's like a touch, I don't think that's a touch as in the mobile phone, but if it was like Android, you can probably do, you'll probably find it in here. So you would just map your button to it, and that would be you done. Right? So, yeah. I mean, the other thing you could do, right, is, as I said, I don't know if you're using any kind of, I don't even know if Unity has kind of blueprints. I know they had, I've got a couple of tutorials on, it's a thing similar that you could buy for Unity that basically gave you kind of blueprints. But basically all I would do was create another function that tied into the function you do on the down. Right? So for example, like button clicked, right? I'd also have another event here, like maybe a custom event, right? That also did exactly the same thing. So it just basically plugged in there. And then this would be linked to your down button or your press touch button. Right? That's the way I would do it. But as I said, sorry I can't really answer you because Unity, don't know. Don't really know. So I'd be giving you different or bad advice if I even tried to advise you on it that much. So basically when they click the button, we need to see if you can, I don't know why it did that. Right. We're not going to do that because we're basically going to have to do a branch off of this. I'm going to say branch. And if that's true, we can do that. If it's not true, we are not allowed to add it to the crafting list. We can also probably do like change the widget to be blacked out slightly. Oh, I've got a new subscriber, have I? It didn't make any noises. I don't know, sometimes Streamlabs makes noises, sometimes it doesn't. If I've got a subscriber, thank you, whoever subscribed. Anyway, back to this. So we're going to need a local variable in here. And we're just going to call it viable. And it's going to be a boolean. And by default it's going to be true, but just to be on the safe side, when we actually do this, we're going to set it to true. And as we go through this, if anything isn't, if any of our criteria aren't met, then we'll just set this to false, right? So, first thing we need to do is grab our structure. Next thing we need to do is break it. Then the next thing we need to do is get the inputs. And basically for each. We can, now we need to do all of them. Yeah, for each will be fine. We could do it with a break, that if one fails then we just break out, but hey ho. Now this is actually going to end up having to be recursive, okay? But we won't worry about that just yet, because one item can rely on another item which can rely on another item. Okay, in which case everything has to be passed back as true. Okay? But as I said, we shall worry about that later. We shall just get the basics working first. So, we're going to take our struct and we're going to get our inputs. Our inputs are the things that make an item. Okay, so for example, a copper sheet, you need copper ore. For copper wire, you need copper sheet. So in this, for the copper wire, this input is actually going to be copper sheet. Okay? So we're going to get our input. Our array element. Is that? Yeah, it is. Now let's just have a look to see what this actually... I think this is an array item. Yeah, no problem, Stevie. I mean, as I said, I'm sorry I can't really help you out very much. If things had been different, I might have went down the Unity way, but to be quite honest, I was kind of fed up writing code, so I thought let's play about with blueprints, which is writing code, but as I said, when you've been working for 20 years in software and writing code in black and white and text, you just fancy a wee change, you know, you don't want to come back and start doing it again when you're just having fun. So, yeah. Right. So these inputs, I need to check what they are, because it looks to me like this is a number, which I'm surprised at, but we're going to have a look. So this is struct product. I'm an idiot. That should not be a struct product. That should be a struct item. Which is why struct items. I do believe struct product is kind of obsolete. Right? So we can delete that. We can break this. Thanks, Steve. That's very kind of you, mate. That's very kind. Yeah, sleep on it. That's sometimes the best idea. Bye-bye for now, Steve. Right, so we've got our item. Right? This is more like what we want. But I've goofed. Right, I have goofed. Right. This shouldn't be a struct item. It should actually be a struct product. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do, right? We're going to actually look at it and find out what we actually need. And it's going to be in recipes. And these are all the structs and data tables that we require. Okay? So, struct product gives us our inputs and outputs. Right? Recipe gives us our inputs and outputs. So we actually want the recipe for this. But what I want to do in the meantime is check our buildings, right? Because our buildings should have like a recipe in it, a recipe variable, or is it the components? Actually, it might be the base building. There's the recipe. So the current recipe is a struct recipe, and that's the one that's doing. So there's recipe inputs and there's recipe outputs. Okay, we need to have a think about this one. And while we're thinking about it, I'm going to go and grab a cigarette. So stick around, guys. I shall be back in about 3 minutes and we shall carry on with this. Back in a moment. Okay guys, we're back, so let's continue with this, and I think I need to check how we actually do this, because I can't remember. I think either would work, but we should use the recipe. I think we should use the recipe, okay? And if we're going to use the recipe, what we're going to do is we're going to go iron ore. We're going to basically set this up like we set up the other products. It's basically the nice name with the spaces taken out, and then we can basically do an operation to get this. So sheet, and this allows us just to grab a single row and not have to iterate through the full data table. So this would be copper wire, and this will be legit. Okay, so we can save that, and we can go back to what we were actually working on, which was the crafting item here and this function. Now from here we don't actually need this structure anymore, but it would be struct items if I was going to use it, because that's going to give us the image and stuff if we need it. Okay, so from this, what we're going to do is we do have to work with a data table here and get a recipe. So we have to get a data table row, okay? And it is going to come for the item name. Actually, let's have a look at this just for a moment. So we've got the item, image, okay, fine, cool, okay, whatever. So we're going to grab our item. We maybe need to redesign this a little bit later on, but for the moment we want string and then we want the replace, and we basically put a space in there, and then we basically plug this in here. Okay, as I said, this isn't ideal, but we shouldn't, we always end up doing a bit of redesign later anyway, so we won't worry about it. We just want the functionality to work, and we can redesign how we do the data later. So we shall plug that in there. We shall plug that in there and that in there. And this is going to come for DT recipes, or to there. and we shall move this along a bit. We might actually not use it in that way. We have an out row, and we're going to break it. Okay, and these are the inputs that we need, right? So these are the things that have to be met for us to be able, for this product to be viable. Okay, so basically we can plug this in, and right, okay, so craft an item. Don't know why that failed. And okay, so this struct item is in fact a struct product. So we shall redo that. We shall put that back the way it was and refresh that, and everything's back to being nice. Now what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to check the player's inventory. So we're going to need a controller, and it's going to be FE controller, and if you're anything like me, then you've probably done this a million times. Okay, so we get our controller and we set it. We get player controller, then we cast to FE controller. We plug that in there, join that up, we join this up to here, join this up to here, we move this over, and we grab this, move it up here, then we plug this back in, and now we have a reference to our controller, which we are going to use in can craft. Okay, so we can bring our controller in, and then we can get our current inventory, which is product available. Okay, and our array of inputs is going to be an array of items. I believe. Except it's not. Which is rather disturbing. We need to go back to recipes. Yeah, that is items. That's the items. Yeah. Okay, panic over. Right, what we're going to do is we're going to delete that, right? Then we're going to drag this out, and we're going to say for each. Right, and this element here is going to be a list of items. To string. There we go. Right, fair enough. So we shall plug this in here. Now we can get our item right? We can delete that, and we can say is equal to that. Okay. Now I need to have a think about this for a second. Now, the items here are the items that we need, are the items that are needed from this here. Okay, so the item that we click on, we can delete that. And we can now use code from the other day, which was in the trading widget, right? So let's have a look at our trading widget. And we had a few things in here. Return inventory quantity. Okay, excellent. So basically what we can do here is we can copy this, right? And we can do a function exactly the same in our... Now in theory you should then move these into a blueprint library, because if you're using these functions consistently throughout many blueprints, then that's the place it should be. But for the moment we're just going to create a function and return quantity from inventory. Okay, and it did have a local variable called temp, I think it was QTY. Doesn't really matter, we can change that anyway, and this becomes an integer. Then we can paste this code in, and it's temp quantity, which is fine. And we're going to drag this in where we need to. Can set it there, delete that. This can go in here and in here. Now it's going to have an input of the new item that we're going to check in the recipe. Okay, we're going to get the temp quantity here, then we shall plug it in there, and we shall delete that, and then finally we shall get this here and set it, and we shall plug that in there, that in there, that in there, delete that, move this up, and this is going to have an input, and it's going to be item, and it's going to be an E item, and then that is going to go in there. Okay. So we can now run this from our can craft. We do a for each, okay? We don't need to do that, but we do need to do that. Now we could make these pure, but we won't worry about that for now. So we get the inventory quantity, right? And then we get the actual amount required and check it. Is right, if this, or sorry, if this we'll say is greater than or equal to, wait a minute, we need to get a copy, and it's going to be from this array index, okay, and then this is just going to be a number. So if this or if this is greater than or equal to that, then we can delete that. We can pull this down, drag that in there. Okay. And we set variable to false if it's false. Okay. And once this is completed, we pass back if it's viable. Okay, so we can save that, and now we can check it by adding a breakpoint here. Hi there, Quentin, how are you doing, mate? How's it going for you today? Okay, so we're saying, can we craft this? Okay, we're getting the recipe for it, getting the inputs. Then we have to check the inputs against what we have in our inventory. And if we don't, then we set viable to false. And then we pass back whether it's viable or not. Okay, so we could now do a little save on that. Yeah, we're doing good, better than last night. Last night I think I was a bit tired and we were making simple mistakes, but today been a lot more plain sailing, a lot less problems, and it's going well. And we're just about to have a look to see if our crafting list is going to work properly. So we click on inventory and we're going to make copper wire. Now, the question here is, do we have what we require to make copper wire. And this has decided, so we have products, we need to check what those products are. We have bauxite, copper sheet, so we have 25 copper sheet, so we should have enough to make this. Okay, and there's our 25, and therefore it's true. So we don't do anything, and we resume, and there we go. Okay, and that's fantastic. And let's check to see what else we have here. Right, now in theory we don't have what we require to make a widget. So we have 0, and that's 2. So this is going to be false. So this is going to pass back false, so it's not going to join to the end of our widget. Well, Quentin, everybody's born like that. You see, everybody's born that they don't know how to code or anything, and they all learn. The best thing to do is just watch a few tutorials and just take it from there. Yesterday afternoon I did a stream, and at the start of it was a tutorial on how you do a widget, like put something on the screen as like a HUD. A very basic start to it, and today at the start of my stream I did a very introductory tutorial on enumeration. So you maybe want to go back and have a look at those, and have a look at some other tutorials that people have done. So if we click widget, we shouldn't have it. You'll see it doesn't appear. Now if we add to our copper wire, it should allow us, and that goes up to 2. And that's exactly what we want to happen. Now what we could probably do here is like have this grayed out or something, because basically they're unavailable. But our functionality is working. Okay? So we can stop this, and what I could do in the controller, so if we go to our controller, have we got our controller up there? No. Okay, whatever. Right, so we can look at our controller. And we can add some iron sheet to this so that we can make widgets. Let's add 100. Well, if you do sub, thank you very much. As I said, check the description for other things, and check my other videos if you like. I'd appreciate that, but up to you. and getting a bit OCD there about that. Now what we should be able to do now is we should be able to create widgets, and we should be able to create a new thing. Okay, so we click that, resume, we click that, resume, and there you go. We can now create more than one thing. Now we could do that before, but we weren't checking anything to actually check if the player could actually do it. Right, so we can add that, we can add them, and then we can add more of them. And apparently we can't make a new thing. Now I don't know why, but we can check why we can't. Okay, by putting actually a breakpoint there, and when it turns it off we can check the values. Right, so if we click on that, apparently nothing's happening. Okay, add that breakpoint again. What's up with this a new thing? Why have you got a problem, a new thing? Right, I'm guessing that it might be in this recipe. Yeah, it's not in recipes. Duh. Now, why it's in products, I don't know. But it's not in the recipe, so basically we need to add it. So that's a new thing. And that's a new thing. And I think we made this like a, I don't know what it is, just do that, what the heck. Process time 10 seconds, let's say. Right, and the inputs are going to be, it's iron sheet, and we're going to need 5 of them, and copper sheet, and we're going to need 10 of them. And the output is going to be a new thing, it's not going to be plastic. Output produced is going to be 1, and where made, it's going to be made in a fabricator. Save that. Press play on that and go with that. Inventory, new thing, resume, resume, there it is. Okay. So the final part of this is now once they've clicked that button, okay, then we need to basically remove we need to remove these from the inventory. Okay. So on this point, what we can do is we can branch okay, and this is going to go in here, this is going to go in here, so if it's viable and it's false, we just basically go to here, okay, and we are basically going to remove the stuff for the inventory, in here, okay, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to grab that then we're going to have to grab that, right, so that's going to go in there, that's going to go in there, okay, okay, this is going to have to go down here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to have to look through our things again. I mean, these aren't going to be big arrays anyway, so I'm not too worried about it, let's say. So we do that, and this is where we have to remove. So we can basically go into our what is it? It was trading. That returns inventory quantity, and I think we need the other one, which has the other. What we can do here is go to trading and select the trading line, and this has got a lot more functions in it. Remove product from inventory. Okay, so we can look at this one, and we can basically copy this we have all the right stuff. So if we go back to our crafting item, and we create another function. Remove items from inventory. Okay. We can paste this. And then we can add our inputs. And that's going to be item and quantity. And now we can change that to an integer. And I'm guessing that goes there. And then this goes in here. Now this is never going to be the case for this, because we've already checked if we've actually got it. So we should be able to just go like that. And then if we go back to our they here, actually it's the CanCraft. Okay, so we've got our item and our quantity, so we can just basically say remove item from here, and we get the item, we get the quantity, and then once that has been completed, we do that. So let's try this one out. Now, the way we're going to test it is we're going to have a look at our FE controller. Okay. Controller. And it's going to be these copper sheets and iron sheets. So we're looking at 125. So if I press inventory and we resume that, that's down to 15, that's down to 95. Perfect. So there you have it, guys. We have a working crafting list. Now, we aren't crafting anything yet, but we'll get to it. We'll get to that tonight, I think. And press resume. And you'll notice that our copper sheet is now down to 13. If we do another one, it's down to 11. 9, 7, then it's not going to allow us to do anymore. And that, my friends, is a good time to finish off this stream. If you enjoyed it, come back, subscribe, check the description for my Discord and Patreon and my previous game that's on Steam. You can buy it now. And we shall see you later tonight. Bye-bye.